And I'm here to welcome you this morning on behalf of Rights and Democracy, a grassroots political organization working in Vermont and also here in New Hampshire, and also on behalf of the Monadnock Progressive Alliance, or MPA. MPA is a local affiliate of RAD, and we work right here in the Monadnock region. And I'd like to thank you all for coming out this morning on this beautiful day. Also like to thank all of the organizers of this event and other events in Manchester and in Plymouth today. And thank all of the active members of MPA and RAD. And of course, special thank yous to Andrew Valinsky, our own District 2 Executive Counselor, and Nina Turner, President of Our Revolution. Thank you. The news of this past week has been difficult, an understatement, I know. This has been one of the lowest weeks we've had. These are indeed difficult times we are living in, but I gained strength from the words of Clarissa Pinkola Estes. We were made for these times, she says. Yes, for years we have been learning, practicing, been in training for, and just waiting to meet on this exact plane of engagement. And yes, we were made for these times. That is why you are here today, and it's certainly why I am here today. I retired from a 30-year career teaching middle school here in Keene at Keene Middle School. Thank you. And who knew that my career was essentially my set of training wheels, teaching me all that I needed to know to be effective as an active and passionate promoter of democracy in a time when this work is so desperately needed. I'm here. No, we are all here to build a progressive movement toward a world where everyone has access to quality health care, where differences in culture, in skin color, in gender, and in sexual preferences are not only tolerated, but celebrated, where poverty is a thing of the past, where our beautiful blue planet is beloved, respected, and even honored, and toward a world where human greed is kept in check by laws that elevate people over profits. Estes' poem continues, "We are needed, that is all we can know. And though we meet resistance, we more so will meet great souls who will hail us, love us, and guide us. And we will know them when they appear." And before I introduce you to one who I consider to be one of our greats, you should have received a piece of paper when you came in on which to write a question for our question and answer period. If you did not receive a piece of paper, please raise your hand. Someone will come around and make sure you get one. All right, so I think we're set. All right, so I was talking about great souls, and one of the ones who I consider to be one of New Hampshire's greatest is our own executive counselor, endorsed by RAD in the 2016 election, Andrew Valinsky. Councilor Valinsky, in his first term of office, has shaken up the conservative base with his progressive agenda. A fierce advocate for public education, in his first month of office, he led the challenge against the appointment of Frank Edelblu as Education Commissioner. As a proponent of a living wage, he expects our state vendors to adequately compensate their employees. He has been a strong advocate for commuter rail and he seeks new approaches to the opioid crisis rather than the old, ineffective criminal approach. We appreciate all that he is doing for us in keeping a check on power in the State House. And I would now like to welcome Andrew Volinsky.
Hey everyone. Welcome. Thanks for having me here. Given what's happened in the last week or two, I just have this phrase that runs through my head over and over and over again. And that phrase is, I am an immigrant. I am an immigrant. Unless you're a Native American, every one of you should be saying the same thing. I am an immigrant. Say it with me. I am an immigrant. When you lock up those children in cages in Texas, those are my children. When we locked up children during World War II because they were of Japanese American descent, those were my children. When we deprived children of an education in schools that were separate but decidedly unequal, those were my children. And so when we think about what's happening in the country and how to build a movement, we have to be able to carefully and clearly say where we stand. And I stand among the least. If you mistreat the least in our society, you are mistreating me. And so I think the first rule of being a progressive is to be able to say what you stand for. You know what, given this setup, and let's just talk about this among friends. So, if the first rule is knowing what you stand for, obviously that means you don't engage in the calculus of triangulation. When you're running for the US Senate, you don't agree with the Manchester mayor and say we have enough refugees just to take the issue away from your opponent. When you're governor, when the Claremont school funding case gets decided, you don't fight like hell to oppose a remedy because you want to run for the Senate someday. You don't engage in that, you stand for things. So let me share this. My last name's not really Volinsky. My family emigrated through Ellis Island, and some border agent didn't know how to spell whatever their last name was, and the name is lost. But I'm proud of the name Volinsky, because Volinsky comes from the Volinsky Regiment. The Volinsky Regiment was a part of the army under the Tsar of Russia that refused to fire on unarmed civilians who were rebelling and mutinied. And their mutiny started the Russian Revolution. So I guess in some ways, being here with our revolution, it's pretty appropriate that I have the last name Volinsky. And so I think of the second rule of being a progressive is being able to tell stories. When you're making a point, tell a story. Illustrate it with something personal about you or a neighbor or a loved one or a friend. It makes it much more understandable and poignant. I think being a progressive, it's incumbent upon us to understand the issues, to have a deep and nuanced understanding. And so when you have that understanding, you can figure out where the pressure points are. So obviously the major public uproar about holding children hostage affected the administration. But some people also figured out that the airlines had to fly children to foster care destinations and put pressure on the airlines to refuse to do that. And even better, individual flight attendants walked off flights to keep the flights grounded and thereby prevented them from flying children out of Texas. Understanding the pressure points. Here in New Hampshire, I'm on the executive council, and I know that we have border agents holding checkpoints in our state. I actually drove through one a week ago Friday in Lincoln. And by the way, Lincoln is not a border town, in case anyone needs to know that. But we came to the next council meeting, and I said to the DOT, Department of Transportation Commissioner, do you have any of those electronic billboards around Lincoln? And she said, yeah, we do. And I said, could you put up a message there warning people that there's a border checkpoint coming up? And she said, yeah, we could do that. And then the governor stepped in and said, we are not putting up warnings of border station checkpoints. And so we now have the governor on record. The governor can say that he supports immigrants and that he's not part of the Trump administration team suppressing immigration, but he's on record. And it was because I happen to understand the nuance, the details. So deep understanding where the pressure points are. So I am, as I mentioned, a state level executive. So I tend to spend more time looking at state issues than the federal issues because those are the ones I directly impact. So let me tell you where I stand. I stand for education, schools that are safe for our kids and where teachers are well paid. Do you agree with me? So let me take a point of personal privilege if I can. Arming teachers is not going to make schools more safe. You know what makes schools more safe? Taking care of the people in them and around them. And so we don't need more guns. We need more social workers. And so here's my point of personal privilege. We have with us today a high school social worker from the A. Randolph Smith High School in New York City. And she happens to be sitting about 6 rows back. And more importantly, she's my daughter, Molly. Let's hear it for Molly. Raise your hand. So I believe in education. I believe in jobs. Jobs that we invest in. Good jobs that keep people in the state, attract people to the state, and also give people dignity as they finish out their careers. I believe that science is a thing, that climate change is real, and the time for climate action is now. And so when our governor vetoes the bill that would have expanded net metering, which is a way to share solar power, this week, my business partner and I finished a 22 kilowatt solar installation on our office building. And so we personally are opposing the governor by putting the panels on the roof. And so the last piece that I think of as a state level official is healthcare. There is no doubt that we need health care for all, in the federal system, Medicare for all. No one should be one illness away from bankruptcy. So, given the crowd, I kind of suspected we would all share those values. So it was kind of a cheap shot by me. But here's where we may differ. And here's where I'm going in this campaign. I think if we share all those values, we have to talk about how we pay for those values. I don't think that we should be haunted by the ghosts of Mel Thompson and Bill Loeb. We need to say the emperor has no clothes and talk about our property taxes. Who do they advantage? Who do they disadvantage? And quite frankly, I understand it's the third rail of New Hampshire politics. I'm ready to grab onto it. Who's with me? And so, if you are with me, you ought to go sign up at andrewvalinsky@gmail. And you can donate. Thank you. But here's the thing. I think we have to hold all of the candidates and elected officials accountable. You can talk a good story about being for education or being for good roads or whatever your issue is, but you got to talk about how we pay for it fairly. And if you're a progressive, the other thing you have to do is always talk about the money, because it's the money that the other side is interested in. And talking about fairness in terms of economics, talking about who's advantaged and who's disadvantaged is what we need to do each and every time. So my 5 rules of being a progressive. First, say what you stand for. Second, illustrate it with personal stories. 3, develop a deep and nuanced understanding of the issues that are important to you. 4, understand where the pressure points are and exert pressure. And finally, always, always talk about the money. That's how I approach being a progressive and building a progressive movement. Thank you. So, if you're a progressive in the US, you have to know our next speaker. I heard our next speaker during the 2016 campaign when I was Bernie's New Hampshire lawyer, and this person was Bernie's key surrogate. This spring, I was lucky enough to be selected for training by the PCCC in DC, the Progressive Change Campaign Caucus. And this person wowed us over and over and over again. She is from Cleveland. She was on the Cleveland City Council. She was an Ohio State Senator. She is the president of Our Revolution. Let's all welcome Nina Turner.
Thank you. Wow, Keen, it's great to be here. Loving you guys. I want to thank Andrew for that wonderful, wonderful introduction. And that was quite a training. Our Revolution partnered with the PCCC, and we had about 450 progressives from all across the country, from all walks of life, there to be trained on how to run for office. It was beautiful. So to RAD and to MPA, it's a pleasure to join you. I've been on a whirlwind tour through the great state of Vermont and now the great state of New Hampshire. 8 stops. Working a sister from the time I landed to the time I leave. But this is a beautiful thing to be on a people-powered tour across these two great states. So Andrew really laid it out, and we're gonna have some Q&A, so I'm gonna make sure that I stay on track here. So I'm gonna go really fast, and then maybe through the Q&A, I can slow down just a little bit. But you know, this whole movement is really about the people in this room and your sisters and brothers who have been in every room that I've been in for the last 9 months. 37 states I've been to in the last 9 months on behalf of our revolution, groups like RAD, and now here for MPA. And it is us, people like us, people with a collective consciousness. We are the reason why the change is going to come. I've enjoyed reading the signs that I've seen walking up the stairs and how we express ourselves. The one in the back of the room, progressive platform, stop the war. You know, one of the urban true. I mean, one of my favorite urban poets used to say that we have money for wars, but we can't feed the poor. That was Tupac Shakur, he said that. And that was just as true when he said it as it is today. We need to look at it. Andrew talked about how do we pay for these things. We are the wealthiest nation on the face of the earth. And I do agree with him that as progressives, we do have to talk more about where the money comes from, because the other side paints our vision as if it is unreasonable. It really is not unreasonable to say that in the wealthiest country on the face of the earth that everyone in this country should have health care. That's not unreasonable. It's not unreasonable to think that in the United States of America that everyone that lives here should have clean water and fresh air. That's just not unreasonable. So as we reflect on what's happening to our sisters and brothers in Flint, the poisonous water that they have to not just drink, but also bathe in, just think about that. You know, Senator Sanders and I were in Flint a few months ago because he promised them that he would come back, and he is a man of his word, and he did go back. And we met with a small community of folks in a black church. An overwhelming majority of the 30 people in that room were African American, but we had some rainbow in there. But they were mainly African Americans, and to hear mothers talk about the fact that their children still have to bathe in that water and the sores that they get. In America. And then we all know that a couple of weeks ago it was revealed that our sisters and brothers in Iowa, 9 counties deep, did not have access to clean water. This is the United States of America. So 3 things minimally I believe that we should come to expect. 1 is clean water, 2 is fresh air, and 3 is food. No one in the United States of America should go to bed hungry. And I just don't think that's too much to ask. So the people that you elect to office, it matters. It really does matter. It matters whether or not they have the courage and conviction to stand up for the people who give them the power. Sisters and brothers, you loan elected officials your power temporarily. It's not their power. It's your power. You give and you can take away. And we need to take away from folks who only talk a good game. You know, the last place that we were at, and I believe someone asked a question about what do you do with folks who just want to banty about the word progressivism? People who just label themselves progressive because it's a new hot thing, Andrew. It's good. It's hot. It's hot to be a progressive. You know, it's like the new kid on the block, the new fashion. It's to be a progressive. But it's not just enough to say that you are a progressive. Show me what you value, what you stand for, and I'll show you whether or not you are progressive. And at some point in time, it doesn't matter how much people try to fake it. You can't fake forever the real thing. And we will find out who are the real progressives and who are not. Who are the ones who are just whispering sweet nothings in our ears, and who are the ones who are willing to leverage the people's power to lift the citizens in this country. My brother, Jim Hightower, from the great state of Texas, he talks about, they love you, Jim Hightower. I hope you tuning in. Everywhere. Him and I, we've traveled too. But he talks about the workaday people in this country. And that's really what we're talking about. black, brown, white, yellow, and red, and everybody in between, the workaday people of the United States of America, we deserve more and better than what we are getting. Or the way that Brother Frederick Douglass framed it, he said that power concedes nothing without a demand. So we're going to start making some demands. And not to be ashamed. You know, it's just curious to me, it just absolutely boggles my mind how folks in power talked to us every single day about how important it was to bail out the banks. We got to bail out the banks. We got to bail out the banks. We got to bail out Wall Street. We got to do it. We got to do it. We must do it. We all know that we went through a great recession in this country. And guess what? The American people did it. But when it comes time to bail out our sisters and brothers in Flint, 4 years later, they still don't have clean water. When it comes time to lift up the working class in this country who work 2 and 3 jobs just to make ends meet, the system itself is rigged in a way that they don't get a bailout. Or when it comes to making investments in education so that our children, who have to both compete and collaborate with other folks' children all over, not just this country, but all over the world, who bails them out? As our young people, as they walk across the stage earning their degree in one hand and they got debt in the other, who bails them out? I just had the opportunity to have breakfast with a couple from New Zealand. James, I think that's right, from New Zealand. And they talked about how, you know, college used to be free, but now they have to pay something. And they said it's $7,000 a year. And guess what? No taxes, no interest rate on that. We would trade that in the United States in a heartbeat. Now, if they can do that there, why can't we do that here? It is really, sisters and brothers, can I tell you how we get this done? It is about the social contract. It is about one to another what we collectively agree that we want to do with our money. When I hear conservatives say nothing is free, you know what? No, nothing is free. It's paid for by taxpayers' dollars. The prison industrial complex paid for with taxpayers' dollars. The bailout of Wall Street paid for with taxpayers' dollars. Money that we give all over the world paid for with your money. No, nothing is free. But it's all about how we pull our collective resources for a greater good. In this country, we believe that public education, well, some of us believe that, is a greater good. So we pool our money. Infrastructure, a greater good. So we pull our tax money to pay for that. So why can't we pull our resources to have Medicare for all? I just don't understand that. We can do that. And people in Congress who hem and haw about how we can't afford it, meanwhile, they got the best health care plan that our tax dollars can buy. Something is wrong with that. So the social contract in this country must change. And one of the ways that we change that contract is by holding these people accountable, electing folks who care more about the next generation than they do about the next election, and hold them accountable every single election cycle. And if they don't carry out the people's will, we give and we can take away. So I want to kind of round out my remarks and just thanking organizations like Rights and Democracy for all the great work that they do and the partnership that they have with our revolution. This is time for revolution, sisters and brothers, and we can't be afraid of revolution. In the United States of America, we've had 3 revolutions in our country's history. We had the American Revolution, bloody. We had the Civil War in the 19th century, bloody. We had the Civil Rights Movement in the 20th century, bloody, not as bloody, but some people lost their lives, other people lost their livelihoods. We are not afraid of revolution in this country to get a certain change. We are in the 21st century, and I see another revolution emerging. It will not be bloody, but it is the people's revolution, and we are on the precipice of that right now. The 4th revolution. And sisters and brothers, we can do this. Don't pay attention to the people who say that we can't. They need to get out of the way of the people who say that we can. We don't elect, we elect leaders who are both truthful about our current circumstance, but we also elect leaders who are visionary. How many people are voting for folks to keep things the same? We want vision, we want integrity, we want authenticity. And from time to time, we want somebody who's just gonna flat out listen to us, to what we have to say about the situation. We can have it. President Nelson Mandela once said it always seems impossible until it is done. There were points in time in this country's history where there was a certain reality and somebody or somebody's everyday people putting a little extra on their ordinary said, oh no, wait a minute, we can do that. From abolishing slavery, we could do that. If my folks depended on the status quo to abolish slavery, baby, I'd still be in chains today. They overcame the establishment. The women who said, oh no, we sick of it. We're going to vote. We're getting our right to vote. We will be treated like equals in this country. We will vote and we will run for office. Dr. Alice Paul chaining herself to the White House gate. They were called crazy. They were thrown in jail. They were force-fed. If those sisters had depended on or only waited for the status quo to give them permission, women wouldn't have the right to vote today. Sisters and brothers, I say to you that we challenge the status quo every single generation. We are charged with challenging the status quo, to dream of a world not just as it exists, but as it can be. And all of that comes from the workaday people, not just in this country, but all over the world. So let me close up with this. This is what I want you to imagine something for me. And those of you who have seen me on the stump, you know I always bring my grandmother with me, my wishbone, the jawbone, and the backbone. But I've been feeling Sister Harriet Tubman. She has been all over me. I am a historian. And I talk to our folks all the time, whether it's FDR, LBJ, Mother Jones, you know, they speak to me. But I've had Sojourner or Sister Harriet Tubman speaking to me. And I want you to pretend in your mind, can you go with me in your mind, that she is in this room at this moment. I am choosing her because of her story. Our stories are our strength. We know the story that she was enslaved. You already know that. She had to escape to freedom. She went back to get her family. She could have stopped right there. But she was convicted by her purpose. And she went back over and over and over again. Think about that, over and over again, to set some other folks free. Sisters and brothers in this room this morning, I just want to know, and you don't have to tell me out loud, but in your heart and in your mind, who are you going back to save? See, she went back over and over and over again, putting herself on the line to save somebody else. Who are you willing to sacrifice for to go back to save? See, some of you are in this room because you care about the environment. Other of you care about who's elected. Some of you care about women's rights. Some of you care about voting rights. Some of you care about criminal justice reform. Some of you are just here because you just want to know what the hell is going on in the world. Whatever reason that you are here, you have to say in your mind that I am purposed for this moment and I plan to save some folks. Pick your issue and save some people. With these hands, many hands make the light work. And so the moral of the story from Sister Harriet Tubman is that we got to be willing to put something on the line to save somebody else. We got to be willing, in the words of our Native American sisters and brothers, be willing to look 7 generations beyond ourselves. Or as somebody put it, this is not my quote, somebody else said it, be willing to plant trees whose shade we may never enjoy. That is deep in your heart and in your soul. It is not in your head. It comes from your heart first and then to your head. So to hell with these folks, and I meant that, who say that we cannot change the course of history in this country, and dare I say the world. There is a rumbling here. And sisters and brothers, we must get comfortable with being uncomfortable. If you are fighting for justice, you will be uncomfortable. So Sister Harriet Tubman's quote that I want you to take with you as Andrew and I prepare to answer some questions this afternoon or this morning. I don't even know what time of the day it is. A sister just going. I've been up since 5:30 this morning. So you feel her in the room. She's in the room. She's in the room. She said these words: if you hear the dogs barking, keep going. If you see the torches in the woods, keep going. If they're shouting after you, don't ever stop. If you want to taste the freedom, keep going. Her words are all in this room. She is working on our mind through the strength of her spirit and her work. The 21st century version of that. If you want Medicare for all, keep going. If you believe in paid family leave, keep going. If you believe that we ought to have clean water, fresh air, food to eat, be able to take a vacation every now and then, and to live a good life, keep going. If you believe that women deserve to make their whole damn dollar, keep going. If we believe in criminal justice reform in this country, sisters and brothers, if we know from the rainbow mosaic of humanity, because it's not just up to black folks to fight against racism and discrimination and bigotry and hatred. We need our white sisters and brothers right there in the fight with us. We got to keep going. And if we believe that our sisters and brothers at the southern border, most of them trying to come to the land that says that bring me your tired and huddled masses, we must keep going. If we want to taste of freedom, we must never stop. We must keep going. Are you with me? Yeah. We gonna keep going. Say it with me, keep going. Keep going. Keep going.
Let's give it up for Nina Turner. Thank you, we love you.
You gotta support groups like Rights and Democracy. Hello. We gotta support groups like Rights and Democracy and Our Revolution. Don't leave this room. If you are not a member, please sign up. OurRevolution.com, Rights and Democracy, sign up. Be a part of the solution.
Someone taking a picture of this right now? Nina just did what I was gonna do, so thank you. No, it's perfect. You're better than me. So just real quick. My name is Isaac Grimm. I'm the new organizing director with Rights and Democracy New Hampshire. It's my honor and privilege to work with y'all here in the Granite State. Thank you so much for being here. Can we just, one more round of applause for Nina? Thank you so much for being here. So very briefly, we wanted to make sure that we can get to some questions from y'all. So we had the quarter sheets that were given out, and those are being sorted through, and we'll get to as many as we can, especially focusing on those that were, kind of a number of people asked the same question. So we'll be bringing those up in a moment, and it can be either for Nina or Andrew, or it can be either. And last thing before we get to that, I just want to reiterate that if you are not a sustaining member of Rights and Democracy, please do sign up. This movement is built on many things, but it all really boils down to organized people and organized resources. If we're not getting serious about us being out there, bringing more people into the movement with us, organizing more people and building this movement with a huge base that we need, then we cannot win on the issues that we care about so deeply. And if we are not serious and intentional about raising money, then we are also going to keep losing to the right, because they have no problem organizing a lot of people and a lot of money. And if we're not pushing back on that and being serious about building power, then we will keep losing to the right. And I want to say that this is a movement based on love. Every action that we take, when we sacrifice that critical time with our family, with our friends, with our loved ones, that is a revolutionary act of love. When we knock on the door of a stranger and we have no idea what's going to happen there, that is a revolutionary act of love. When we get out in the streets and risk our own bodies, our own lives, that is a deep revolutionary act of love. but it will not be built only on acts of love. We need to make sure that we can keep the lights on when we do that. So thank you all for the ways in which you are already engaging in building this movement. I'm so excited to continue to build it with you all. Thank you for your support, and again, please do sign up as a monthly sustainer if you have not already. There are envelopes that we will pass out. Who here is already a member? That's a beautiful thing. I hope the next time we do this, we can see every hand in the air. Yes. Thank you all again. And questions. So who's got my questions? Come on up. Before you do the question. Yes.
Context, but that context. Would you stand up so we can acknowledge you? Who's here? That. Yeah, right there. I knew I recognized someone. Very cool. All right, Isaac, you can have this back. You want this back? We're not going to cede it.
Y'all should hold on to that microphone.
Okay.
All right.
All right. So you're going to call up people?
Yeah. So the first question is from Sophia. Do you want to read your question, or do you want me to read it? Where's Sophia?
She's over there.
Do you want to read your question?
No.
Okay. This is from Sophia, age 11, and she asks, what do you think the most important issue in our economy is?
The most important issue in our economy, I think, is healthcare. Because our health is our wealth. So, to the extent that I believe that every person should have not just access, but have that healthcare so that they can do every great thing, that would alleviate so much of the pressure on working people every day in this country. If they had access to healthcare, it would boom entrepreneurship, small businesses would blossom. For somebody like you, Sophia, as you grow up and start your own company and be the boss, you could do that with great, without having regard for whether or not you would be tied to any type of job. You would be able to have that kind of health care, and with that gives you an awful lot of freedom. Man, we got to give it up, Sophia. Now, that was a heavy question.
So I would never disagree with Nina.
But he is.
So I'm going to say there's a tie between healthcare and overall income inequality.
Yeah.
I think income inequality is the greatest threat to democracy that we have. If you don't have money, you can't participate. And if you do have money, money equates with power and message and votes. And we need to equalize that so that the power is better shared.
They go
So great
together.
question.
So I'm asking the next question because we've had a few questions that we're trying to morph into one. And they're coming from Sasha and Tori and a few other folks out there in the audience. How do we best convince people who believe the Democratic Party is corrupt to engage again in the party, or is the money too entrenched and our goals too different to work together? And that's a tough one.
Well, there's a phrase that I heard over and over again at the PCC training that I was disappointed I haven't heard yet. So I'm guessing I might hear it now. But let me just say this. The reason I'm a Democrat is because I share democratic ideals. I don't share the approach that's been in place for the last couple of decades. As you heard me say, I think if you're a progressive, you have to talk about what you stand for and how you put that into practice. And I don't think Democrats have done that for a long time. But there's a structure to the Democratic Party. I mean, I was Actually, I was the one who defended Senator Sanders' right to be on the New Hampshire primary ballot because he was challenged because he wasn't a Democrat. I can't think of anyone who's more democratic and more representative of democratic ideals than Senator Sanders. And I am not about to give up the Democratic Party. I'm more about converting it to Senator Sanders' ideals.
Yeah, amen to what Andrew just said, and I know the phrase that he's talking about, which is any old blue just won't do. And, you know, that was a theme that I shouted out at the PCCC training, and it just simply means this, that those of us on the progressive end should not be bullied into going anywhere. That's our party, and we can stay if we want to. So, and many of us do plan to stay. So, but yes, are there entrenched interests in both parties? There are. The establishment wings of both parties are just corrupted by money. And, you know, to add to something that Andrew said, it is really, we have to get this big money out of politics because money is now voice, money is now speech, and the more money you have, the more speech that you have. And the only thing that's on the line is all that we love. That's the only thing that's on the line. And we're slowly but surely turning into an oligarchy in this country. So it's not just the Republican Party that's corrupted by money. The Democratic Party is corrupted by money too. So what are we going to do about it? Those of us who believe in the values of the Democratic Party, those of us who want to see the Democratic Party truly be the party of the people, we have a few choices. People do have choice. Some people want to stay and fight and make it work. We have the Unity Reform Commission that just won through the Rules and Bylaws Committee to remove superdelegates on the first ballot. Now, that wouldn't have happened. I mean, that would not have happened but for people who said, I'm staying and I will fight. That is why that happened. But then there are other choices that people make, and I respect that too. They say, I don't want any parts of it because I don't trust it anymore. The majority of registered voters in this country are registered as independents, and they are registered as independents for a reason. It's because they don't want to play by artificial rules. So whatever the choice is, to me, as long as we have conscious-minded people, laser focused on their purpose and the goal of fighting for justice and equality for all, it doesn't matter what we call it. I think it was Shakespeare who said, a rose by any other name is just as sweet. And so it really is about us being more purpose-focused. And I believe that we can win more people over by not necessarily labeling Democrat or Republican.
Hear, hear. What was that phrase again? What was that?
Any old blue just won't do.
This next question is from Riley. Does Riley want to read their question?
I know, Riley.
What did I write? Increased attention to violence perpetrated within the borders of the United States, always been happening, a little bit more attention these last couple weeks, has led to a now familiar blind eye from the left about violence perpetrated in our name around the world. The U.S. is in shooting conflicts in 11 countries in last count right now. How can we re-emphasize foreign policy from the left? You want to go first?
No, you go ahead. I talked too long on the last one. Unless you want me to.
No, that's fine. Yeah, so I don't mean to give short shrift to foreign policy, but I am a state-level officer, so I tend to focus here. But that doesn't mean that we should not pay attention to what's happening in Israel and Palestine, to what's happening in Europe with respect to immigrants, to our trying to bring along to our bullying mentality other countries in the world. And so if that's your issue, I think you need to move it forward. It's just, for me, I'm more focused on the local economic issues, and in part that's my interest, in part it's my position, that brings me to do that. But you're absolutely right, Riley. It shouldn't be lost.
No, agreed. I mean, many hands make for light work. So everybody in this room can't be fixated on the same issue, or we can't move the ball. I'm with you. I think really what your question gets to is hypocrisy. Just flat out hypocrisy. And so we have to deal with that hypocrisy both domestically and both in the foreign powers. And a lot of Americans don't want to admit the fact that some of the upheaval in some of these other countries was caused by us and our regime, just flat out. So we have to deal with our hypocrisy in America.
The next question is from Mohammed. Do you want to read your question?
Well, welcome, Senator Turner. I moved from Ohio here 5 years ago, so glad to see you, another Ohio senator. My question to you is that, do you think our revolution should single out a state and push for full implementation of the single-payer system so that the nation can benefit from snowball effect as it happened with other socioeconomic changes like K through 12 education, that one state did it, and our resources are limited, and maybe we could benefit from a focused attention to one state? Thank you.
I do. That is such a great question. We can do this state by state. I mean, right now we certainly can't depend on the federal government to do it, not under this, well. State by state would be nice, and I mean, that's why it's important who you elect for governor and who you elect in the legislature. All those things matter. I mean, just look at what just happened last Tuesday. Brother Ben Jealous won his primary in Maryland. And former board member of our Revolution National, but he ran on a platform saying to the folks that live in Maryland that I will put together a Medicare for All program as governor. To me, that is an example of how, if we can't get it on the federal level, we can begin to get some of these programs on the state and local and regional levels. In California, they have what's called the Healthy California Act, where the nurses, and oh my God, let me just shout out the nurses all over America. Nurses have been standing up when other people, in good times and in bad times, the nurses have been there challenging us as a country because they see nurse-to-patient ratio. They see people in some of the hardest, most difficult times of their lives, and they have been the ones shouting from the rooftop before this was popular that we need a single-payer healthcare system in this country. And see, the way we should judge folks is not where they stand in good times and popular times, but where they stand, as Dr. Martin Luther King said, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King said, is where they stand in times of controversy and strife and heaviness. And the nurses have been in this universal health care fight for a very long time, and this is an idea whose time has come. So I totally agree with you that if we cannot sit back and wait for the feds to do it, we have to lead by example, state after state after state. And if we are going to do that, that means we have to elect people to office who have the absolute courage to push that and to get that done, and to use our tax dollars in a way that edifies our social contract one to another.
This next question is from John Michael. Would you like to read your question? I can read it. Oh, okay. Given the trends in outsourcing, automation, and pace of change, would you support a universal basic income? Why or why not?
So first, people should know what a universal basic income is. It's, think of it as a grant for living expenses so that no one falls below a certain level into abject poverty. It is a time, it's an idea that's time is starting to come. I don't think we're quite there yet. I know there are some political discussions about it, and as Nina said on a number of issues, we can bail out Wall Street, we can find the money for that kind of a program, and I think we need to be talking about it.
Agreed.
Great, we can do more questions.
The next question is from David Blair. Would you like to read your question?
Thank you. Ms. Turner, you took us to church just now, and so I'm going to speak as a Christian activist. Jeff Sessions used Romans 13 to defend his terrible policy about separating families, and Romans 13 says basically we must obey the state because the power is anointed by God. I have a friend in the Philippines. She's an evangelical Christian who's been very courageous for years in the people power movement. She counters with Revelations 13, in which a dragon calls forth a beast from the sea, the dragon being, I suppose, the devil, and the beast is given all the power of the devil to rule the world. And she says the state, the Philippine state, our state, has become the beast. So she counters Romans 13 with Revelations 13. So my question is, would you speak, either of you, but particularly you, Ms. Turner, to the role of people of faith, no matter what faith, in the progressive movement, and how the progressive movement as a whole can become a home for people of faith?
No, thank you for that question. I'm a woman of faith myself. My mother was a minister. I often joke that my siblings and I went to church 8 days a week. So I know scripture quite well. And, the golden rule came to mind for me when I saw that A.G. Sessions used the Bible to justify what the Trump administration is doing to our migrant sisters and brothers. And certainly there are other passages in the Bible. We can interpret the Bible any way that we want. It has been interpreted at times throughout our country's history to oppress people. Slaves, obey your masters. Don't even get me started about the impact of Christianity on enslaving my ancestors or taking away the land from our First Nation sisters and brothers. So you can choose to interpret the Bible, or even women, be silent. Don't ask questions. Go ask your husband. What if you don't have one at home? Then what do you do in Christianity? So, you can use the Bible either to uplift, you can use scripture to uplift, or you can use it to oppress. And pretty much that is what A.G. Sessions did in terms of that scripture. But the golden rule came to mind for me: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Or another scripture that says that when I was hungry, you fed me. When I was naked, you clothed me. When I was in prison, you came to see me. That is the part of the Bible that I choose to uplift. I think the Christian faith, the Muslim faith, Buddhist, Hindu, whatever it is, has a great, because there is a connection or there through all of the religions of this world. And it is that whole notion that there is no strangers among us. And if there are strangers, we treat them with the utmost respect. We treat them in the way that we would want to be treated. And so in that way, we do need folks who affirm their Christianity or affirm some connection to a higher power to be among the first to stand up and speak out for people who do not have. The reason why all of this is so vitally important, because but by the grace of God, there go either one of us, that all of us could be those folks who are coming to this country to find a better life, or find ourselves in positions where we need somebody to have mercy on us. So the Christian faith and every other religious faith, we need to live that principle and not just speak that principle. And I thank you for that, because I think the left cedes too much territory in terms of God to the far right. And it's time for us to take what would Jesus do, take it back.
So the little Jewish guy is going to weigh in. So I was pissed off when I heard Jeff Sessions quoting Romans 13. Romans 13 was used to justify slavery. It was used to justify Nazism. And so I counter Romans 13 with Micah 8. What does the Lord want? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God.
Hi, I'm Beth. I want to thank you both for your amazing efforts of bringing, speaking from the heart for this country, and it touches me so deeply. I'm also a reverend, and I wonder if we can, as progressives and liberals, make peace with the flag. And I wonder if we can have a new vision for the flag. It is my hopes, because I am tired of seeing other people dictate what is America and who is American. And I think this is the heart of America. I think we are the heart of America, and I would like to see us raise the flag. And I know it makes everyone uncomfortable, and it's made me uncomfortable for years, but they seek to divide us, and I think we are one.
Last comment, last question. Speaking of flags, tomorrow's Canada Day, and we should shout out to the Canadians and recognize July 1st.
So are you guys ready? We're wrapping this baby up.
Okay.
Okay. Do you have any other further things you want to respond to? Because I'm about to take the mic.
I want you to leave here thinking any old blue just won't do.
Amen. I amen that.
You can have the mic now, Jamie.
Okay. Nina, will you just end us out just saying a couple things, please?
Oh, wow. Man. I don't know, Andrew stole my thunder by taking my any old blue just won't do.
Sorry.
No. It takes a lot of heart to do what we're doing, and for all of you to be here on a Saturday when you could have been anywhere else, you are the true revolutionaries. And to be on this stage with Andrew and to partner with RAD and MPA, and just to travel around the country to get a chance to meet people just like you, I want you to know you are doing this thing. It's not just about people like me or Andrew or folks who've been privileged to get a fancy title here or there. It is really about the everyday people in this country making a difference, and you are doing that. And there is no mountain too high for us to surmount. As progressives, we are going to have valley moments. You are. We're going to have moments where we're all up in the valley and can't see our way out. But when our mountaintop moment does come, we will appreciate it much more because we have been in the valley. You can't appreciate the mountaintop unless you have been in the valley. There is no force on the face of the earth. Amen, baby, I'm with you. Ain't no force on the earth to me greater than collective people power, people with a consciousness and people on the move. And progressives, we are on the move. And I want you to know that there are people all over this country dependent on people like us to be the change and to make the difference. I mean, I've traveled with just tears in my eyes hearing people tell the story of how they agonize every day just to make it, just to survive. And I just happen to believe that poverty should not be a crime in this country. Mm-hmm. Nobody wakes up and says, I want to be poor when I grow up. But we have people in this country who are greedy, and I do agree with Andrew in terms, I think both of what we had to answer, the baby's question over there goes hand in hand. We have to live up to the creed of this nation. It just can't be a bunch of pretty words. It has to show in our actions. Mm-hmm. And so what we do to the least of these, our sisters and brothers, Scripture says we do unto the Lord. That's real. And, you know, for me, it just comes from a deep well in terms of how I grew up. I grew up poor. You know, my parents they worked really, really hard. My family was on the system of welfare. I don't know what I would have done without a safety net. I'm the oldest of 7 children. My mother died at the age of 42 years old, a young age, with her dreams deferred. When Langston Hughes asked in the poem, what happens to a dream deferred? My mother died with her dreams deferred. I'm the oldest of 7 children. At the age of 22 years old, I had to bury my mother, who had no money, who died on the system, who did not even have a life insurance policy. So when I travel this country, I see in people's eyes, I see my mother in their eyes, and their struggle, and their hopes, and their dreams. People like us or people like you, who's going to do it? Who's going to stand up For people who cannot stand, who will speak. For people who cannot speak. And it is not about people with fancy titles. It is about people who have purpose. So if we are willing to unite in our purpose, in a conscious-minded mission, the rainbow mosaic of humanity, there is nothing that we cannot do to change this world. So I consider myself a hell-raising humanitarian. I'm raising hell all over this country for humanity.